Well, here we are. We're in the last module, and I suspect that we're going to have likely 3 videos in this module. So we're going to start out with files and directories, and from there, we're going to go deal with some testing. I'm just going to skim over testing concepts, given the fact that we're using Colab and not all standalone everything. We're limited on what we can do. And I may point you to an external video there if you want supplemental. And then lastly, I want to rehash some things that we've gone over and briefly discuss some options beyond the scope of what the class is that are part of the last graded notebook, graded notebook 5. It's actually an optional notebook since I'm only counting 4 grades. But if you missed one of the first 4, granted it's still optional, but it'd be in your best interest to complete it. One of the tasks in that notebook is go outside of what we've done and search for some things. And I'll talk about that in the last video. So let's start out with this module. And there's a lot of rehash that's going to happen in this module. We've connected to files in the past. We connected to a CSV file. We brought that data in and used it in a data frame. That was, I think, the last module, module 12. It might have been module 11. But we had connected to that file. We could connect to a TXT file, a CSV file, a multitude of different types of files that we can connect to. Usually, we'll connect to a CSV file, a .txt, an XLS, or a database. And that's concepts that, as I said, we spoke about that in a previous module, where we go get our data. Now, I wanted to dig a little deeper into how we go about what we're doing when it comes to connecting to these files. How do we actually do it? Now, there's classes of code that are built in, and they're included in the standard Python library, that allow us to create connection objects. And we say connection objects, well, it's actually our code connecting to a file type of a type different than our program. So our program is a Python program. Standard file extensions.py. And it speaks, if you will, py or Python. The file that we're reading, the CSV or the .txt file, it's not written in that same language. It's written in another language, so we need some kind of interpreter to make the connection to that file, and then we've got to get whatever's in there and bring it in a way that Python can use it. So we've got this class that we have available to us, and we can create a file connection object. That is our connection to the file. And then once we have that connection has functionality or methods associated with it. And here's an example of 5 different functions or methods associated with that file object. Now, this first one is the read object. It allows us to read what's in that file. And by reading it, we have the ability to save a copy of whatever we've read. Now think about it. If you go to read something, you have the ability to save a copy in your memory as you read it. And now it's limited to how much memory you have available, maybe how tired you are, whatever it may be, how complex the data you're reading is. Our computer program doesn't have that same limitation. If we could read it, we could save it into memory. Now, traditionally, we'll save it into memory. We could save it in as a list. We could save it in as a data frame. It all depends on what functionality we use when we're doing that read. There's different types of reads, but for this example, we're just going to do a standard read on a text file. So we'll just assume this is a standard, we call them flat files. They were likely created in a text editor like Notepad or something along those lines. And we're going to read it in. And traditionally, we're either going to start at the beginning and just read everything, or we're going to read one line at a time, or we're going to read all the lines. And that equates to these first three methods. Reads one line in, stores it in memory. Reads all the lines in and stores them into a list. File write, depending on where your position is in that file. Now, if we're using, let's say, Microsoft Word, there's a term that is called an insertion point. And the insertion point is that place in your document. If you have focus on your document with your cursor, and you've clicked in that document, that application, let's say it's Microsoft Word, has focus. You can look in there and you can see a vertical line that is blinking in a way. And that's the insertion point in that document. Essentially what that means is if you start typing, that's where text will be inserted into that file. So thinking about that same concept, if you take your mouse and you click at the bottom of that Word document, where's your insertion point then? What's down at the bottom? And essentially what that means is if your insertion point's at the bottom and you start typing, what you're doing is down at the end. If your insertion point's at the top and you start typing, your work is being done at the top. So this file.seek, we can use that method to put our insertion point or the position of our object, file object, to a certain point within that file. Where do we want to be doing whatever it is we're going to do? I'll talk further about that as we get a little deeper into this first video. But from the methods that we're going to use to read the things in or write the things to that file, there are modes. And we think of modes, let's just look at it as the rules you got to play by if you're going to interact with that file. So the mode is, here's the rules to the game, if you will. The first mode, read mode. The rules are, all you can do is read. You can't write anything. You can't modify anything that's there. Read only. Well, what happens if you try to write? Well, it likely will throw you an error and say, yeah, you can't do that. Or it'll just ignore what you said and say, you should know the rules. It all depends on the IDE we're dealing with or what you're trying to do on how it's going to react. So if it's read mode, and that's all it is read. If it's write mode, That's all it is write, and it overwrites whatever's there. If there's 50 lines of text in there, it overwrites all 50 of them. If that insertion point, or if that position is at the beginning of the file. Now, if that position where you're saying, I want to write here, if your position is at the end and you write, oh, now we're talking about appending. But there's a mode for appending, and that's the A, character A, the letter A. And that's append mode, and append does not write at the beginning, does not overwrite what's in there. It says, all right, we're going to just add to whatever we got going on. And we've dealt with that in lists. We've dealt with that in arrays. So conceptually, it's not a reach from what we've done already. Now, we've got a couple of things that are, we call them a mixed bag, if you will. So I've got A+. That means we can append and we can read. R+, we can read and we can write. Now, what's the difference between the two? In both of them, we can read. In one, we write. At the beginning, we overwrite everything. The other, we write. At the end, we don't overwrite anything. It's a big deal. So in one, we can add to it. The other, we're going to be real careful because we can delete everything if we're not paying attention to what we're doing. So just like the R is read-only, there's an RB that is read-only for a binary file. WB is write-only to a binary file. RB plus is a combination of read and write for dealing with different binary files. So the connection that we're going to use, and we've used it in a way in the past, using that read CSV, excuse me, read the CSV in a previous module. So our connection, what it's going to say is we're going to have the name of the connection object, whatever we want to call it. But make it something that's descriptive of what it is that you're reading in. So when somebody else looks at this object, they know, one, it's a connection object, and they know, two, what it's connected to. I've used an example in here, F. And I used it for a reason. One, it's commonly done. Two, I hate it. I don't like that people do this. And I wanted you to see how it's commonly done so you get an understanding of why I say I don't like it. And once you see the issues that I have with it, and potentially will have the same issues, you'll realize, oh, there's got to be a workaround to make this safer, to where I'm not putting myself in a situation where I'm likely to make a mistake. So we'll start out with a little bit of housekeeping. And first is going to be the path to whatever it is I'm going to connect to. And we've created a path in the past, I call it URL, and that was a link or hyperlink to a shared Colab or notebook in my Colab. Or it could be a shared link to a CSV in my Google Drive. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's a link to a file somewhere. So this one is a link to a file called myfile.txt in my F drive. Now, I've got a USB plugged in, and that's my F drive. And here it is. It's a TXT file, .txt, text document called my file. And for me to get that path, I can right click on it, properties. I want the details, and it'll tell me the folder path and the file name. That's what I need. And from that folder path and the file name, there's the folder path, and there's the file name. So here's the path to that file. I import C profile. We've done that in the past. We did it in the last module or the one before it. And that'll allow us to collect data associated with the performance of whatever we're going to do. So I'm going to create some methods or some functions. And each one is going to be a different kind of connection to the file. So here's one with W. What's the W mean? Write. Here's one that's in R mode. That's read only. Here's one A. That's append. Here's an R plus. Ooh, read and write. Here's an A plus. Read and append. Now, each one of those is distinctly different. We talked about that previously. So with that said, what are we doing in here? Well, I declare the name of the function, got some arguments, default values. So if I call this and don't pass it anything, it'll still run. This will write whatever the message is to that file because it received the path, write mode, write whatever you pass to it in message 1, write it to the file. Write whatever's, there's a second one, write that one to it as well. Then close the file when you're done. I always compare this to the refrigerator. Close the refrigerator when you're done. That way, when somebody else needs it, everything in there is in the form that it should be. And temperature didn't go up and, let's say, the milk went bad or whatever. But when we open it, have a matching close. Open, matching close. It should be straightforward what's happening here. We just go read whatever's in that file. For line NF, print line. Close it. Let's open one to append. Wait a minute, he's writing this thing differently. Why is he doing this? He's switching it up on us. He just told us one way and now he's doing it a different way. There's a reason. With this one, I'm saying with open, path, and append mode as F. Do this. So here's everything we're going to do. And that's all within that open connection. And when we're done, wrap it up and close it. So it's a nice, tidy little package, if you will, of everything we're going to do with that connection. Indentation matters, doesn't it? So this may help you keep things clean and orderly. Same thing. I use the with. Now this one is the read and write. Got some things here. I've got a seek in here. So I open this connection, read and write as F. F.write, so I take that message that was passed in and I write it to the file. Now, let's think about that. If we're talking about that Word document that we were talking about a minute or two ago, if you went and wrote a paragraph, when you're done with that paragraph, where's your insertion point? At the end of the paragraph. If you start typing or go to do something, where's it going to happen? At the end of the paragraph. So I wrote something at the beginning of the file. When I'm done writing something at the beginning of the file, I'm at the end of the file. And I say, you know what? I don't want to be at the end of the file because what I want to do now needs to start at the beginning of the file. So I say f.seek 0. That'll get me up to the start of the file. From here, let's go read in whatever's in that file. So for line in F, let's go boom, boom, boom. I want each line that's in that file. Go through everything that's in there and print it out. Write that message again. Write that same message one more time. Where did it write it? At the end of the file. Because that's where we ended up when we got done printing these things off. We went from start to end. I didn't go back up to the top, so now I'm at the end. Let's write at the end. I didn't overwrite what was there. I wrote at the end. Let's go back up to the beginning and print out everything that's in there again. And then we're going to close the connection. That's this open to read write. What are we going to do here with this open to read and append? Well, same concept. Write something there. Go back to the beginning. Read everything in. Read lines. Right? Remember what read lines did? It saved all the lines into a list. Print lines. I want to see what it looks like. We'll do that. We'll spit it out and we'll see what's going on. Go back to the beginning. Do the same thing. Read it in a different way. This line.strip. But I don't want to see what we would see here when we go look, once we move forward and see this code run. What's at the end of each line? \n. The new line escape sequence. So it tells the program, hey, go down to the next line because we're all done here. When you're reading in, you read in until you get there. Do you want to read that in and save that? Because that's what happened here. We'll see it. No, I don't want my list having \n in it. I don't want to be printing things off. And so, yeah, Jeff Newborn, \n. 24, \n. That doesn't make sense. So this will allow us to do it cleaner, still stored it in the list. We'll print off what these things are. What is F? What data type is it? Lines, what data type is that? And we'll go ahead and close it. Okay. So I'll define a main, and in that main, I'm going to enable prof. Prof, oh, that's the profile. So we're going to start keeping track of efficiencies here. And we're going to open up to write and pass it hello world, new line. Hello world again, no new line. We'll read it in. Or we'll read what's in the file. We'll add another line to it. Or add something at the end, more content. No new line there. Does it matter? Open up, read what's in there. I want to open up and write nothing in there. Well, if I open up, my position is at the beginning and I write nothing. Nothing is something. That erases everything that's there potentially. And then we'll display it. Open to ReadWrite, add something new. And it wrote something new a couple of times. We'll see what it did. Open to read and append, new line with hello, display it, and then stop tracking what we're doing. Here's where I execute that main method. So let's go ahead and run this. by item. So each one of those functions, they're in memory. As is, we just ran the main. Hello world. Hello world again. Hello world. Hello world again. More content. Remember, I didn't have a new line there. I didn't have a new line here either. Something new. That's my first something new. I added another something new to it. Now I've got two. I overrode it. Something new. Something new. What do I have in that first list? All three of those things with new line at the end of them. I want a list without the new lines. We did that. What's the data type? Well, that's a IO text IO wrapper. That's the object we created an instance of. It's our connection to that text file. Lines. Oh, that's what this was right here. It's a data type. It's a list. What can I do with a list? Oh, there's a lot of things I could do with a list. Best way to navigate a list? Let's go with a for loop. Let's go ahead and display what's in there. Something new, and hello. Let's go run the stats on it. We look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. 12 methods were called. 13 if you count the main. We come down here, 1,520 function calls and 0.13 seconds. Wow, why did it go about that? All this stuff? That many? Yeah, that many. That many. And it'll tell you how many times it ran each one of them, what was using it, right on down the line. I had some of them 93 times those methods were run. Okay. Some of them have to do with printing, some of them have to do with understanding the characters that are there. Each one's a little bit different. But we can see how long it took, the overall time. 1/100th of a second. It's not slow. So for the most part, I've got the first two quizzes will be associated with this first video. One of them will be on the modes and the other will be on the methods. So I'll see you in the next video.